everybody. Get everybody's attention. Hi, my name's Amanda, and I run Cinetopia, which right now we run a series of events from film screenings, but mostly we are trying to start these first masterclasses, but we run networking events. I don't know if any of you have been to them, but a monthly sort of networking where we can all sort of filmmakers get together and talk and meet and do opportunities. Well, this is our first Masterclass plus networking night, and when we first started talking about these, Ali and Lily and I talked about what we think people could use in an informal environment. So I hope you will come and ask questions. I'll do very little talking, and I'll let the experts talk. Today we have Ali Murray, who's a sound designer, Naomi Spiro, who's an editor and producer, and Stephen C. Horne, who's a colorist. So I'm going to first start by asking them how they got into their respective fields, and then we'll go into, they'll just give a lot more tips about post-production. So, Ali?
I came here via a long, weird way. Started off as a cellist, became a rock drummer professionally while studying engineering and robotics. Did IT, fell out with IT, went back to being a musician, went back to uni to do a master's, ended up doing film. Got in a 16 bus, got here.
That's probably more direct than my route. I was in let's see, how did I start? I would say as a PA on a set, which was by happenstance. I didn't study film. I was driving across America, and my cousin, who's a documentary filmmaker, was filming, and she was in Los Alamos, New Mexico. She didn't have a ride back to Texas, so I picked her up, and she said, "Could you hold the bounce card?" And from there, she said, "Can you type?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Can you transcribe the footage?" I said, "Yes." She's like, "Great, well, you know the footage now. Can you assist edit?" I'm like, "Yes." And that was the beginning, and she paid me probably like $3 an hour, and then I moved to LA and actually got paid and trained as an assistant editor, moved to editing, moved to New York, grew into post-production supervising for film and television, and then moved into producing. So now I do both editing and producing for documentaries, film, TV, commercials, really corporates, whatever. So that's my journey. And I'm here in Edinburgh as of 3 years ago. And I haven't left. I'm staying until I get kicked out.
I started color grading basically when I started making films. About 11 years ago, I was in Aberdeen at their college studying television production, where you just learn everything at one go. You learn how to direct, or operate a camera, edit. And when I got into the edit suite, I realized my stuff just didn't look the way I wanted it to. So it needed some kind of color management, and that's when I realized how important colors were. And ever since then, every time I've worked on a film, edited it, colors have been super important to me. I knew that I wanted to specialize in that by the time I got to Edinburgh, and studied at the uni here. And since then, I've just been editing, color grading, and these days, color grading still isn't taught that much anymore in unis in Scotland anywhere. So it's kind of still a specialized field that I think is pretty important, because colors, they're everywhere. We're a visual species, and they change emotions, moods, and I think they're fascinating. So that's what I work in.
Thank you. So one of the reasons why we wanted to start with post-production, I think, is that a lot of times there's a lot of focus on the production process and the cinematography, and we're spend less time sort of focusing on the post-production, and there are certain things that could be done that we don't want to fix in post before. And so we thought post-production specialists could perhaps give us some advice on what to do before, so we don't run into problems and later. But I also would be curious to ask you both all to think about is how much time we should think about too in terms of like for sound design, and how much sort of should we think about in our production planning and colorists and editing and whatnot. So it's just something for us to think about. But I'll let you start with your tips for what not to do.
Okay, cool.
And I'll get your.
I'm only talking into this because it's recorded. Otherwise, I would just bellow as usual. sound is kind of witchcraft as far as a lot of directors and producers are concerned. I kind of think sound's pretty important. You guys think it's pretty important, otherwise. So, you know, storytelling always started around a campfire. We're talking to each other. It's all about the sound. So, I get the chills anytime I hear anyone say, "Oh, we'll fix it in post." And I always say, "No, let's fix it in pre. It is always going to be faster, cheaper, higher quality. It's going to be better." So, if we have a look at our second slide, give you an idea who I am. It's me. Sound designer, musician, educator. I do some lecturing a few places. Consumer of curries. Oh, yeah. I want every film to sound awesome. Not awful. Awesome. Different thing. And I am constantly being thwarted about trying to make it sound awesome. I would like to help you, help me, to help us to make awesome sounding films. This is me doing Foley for Spider. I like Foley. It's fun. Okay. Thank you. The major problems that I have with work that comes into me. Noisy recordings. Very often because they are in a noisy place, or at a noisy time, or the microphone is in the wrong place. When I rule the world, the little bits, see these little rings that fit onto cameras that hold microphones? I'm going to take them all, I'm going to destroy them. Cameras with microphones on, the microphones are never in the right place. Never. Ever. Ever. Never. Other problems. Communication, understanding, expectation. What do you want? What are you actually looking for? What do you think we can achieve? We're very used to seeing what we can do visually. We can take out King Kong. If King Kong's behind me, yeah, we get rid of him. Or we turn him into a pixie. Or we put me in Belgium. Or, you know, that's very easy. Can't do that with sound. Sound is a very different medium. And it is, that's what I like to see. It's something where we need to consider what we can and can't do. And it is much, much easier to fix these things beforehand than afterwards. Problems in workflow, unlocking edits, wrong files, no records. When you hand over sound to somebody like me, it helps if you send me the video in the right codec so it plays smoothly. It helps if you send me the sound that you actually want to be there. It also helps if you send me the other sound with a way that I can find out what it is and where it is if I need it. As far as badly organized sound, no handles, no room tone. When you edit a picture, I'm led to believe in general that you're taught to keep it quite a flat structure, not too many video tracks that you move between. Sound doesn't do that. Moving things in to fill up gaps is generally a problem because I'm going to have to find out what it is and work out where I need to put it instead. What you start off with as an OMF or an AAF being exported from your video edit, try and think about letting me know what those sounds are. That will make my life quicker and easier. That means the job gets done faster, better, and cheaper. Give me the information. Make sure that it has handles. For those that don't know, that's like a hidden bit of sound at the edges of every clip. And room tone. Always get room tone. If we're editing anything, you need to have a basis of what the sound is. So in this case, the room tone would be awful, really, really noisy. If we were filming in here, the first thing I'd do is I'd get them to turn the pump off, I'd get them to turn whatever the humming thing is off, then I would check if there was a clock or fridges that needed to go off, check if there's any noisy lights. We would make a point of getting it as quiet as possible. Take control of sound where you can. Time. The number of times that people will phone me up. Actually, you know the classic one, the classic triumvirate. Ring, ring. Hello, Ali Murray here. Hello, I'm a producer. I want you to work on some sound. Excellent, that's what I do. That's very useful. I don't know much about sound. We've broken the budget and I need it by 3 o'clock this afternoon. At this point, I would drop the mic, but I have too much respect for microphones. I don't know what I'm doing. Brilliant, awesome. I've spent all the money. This isn't sounding very good. And I need it by going backwards in time. Think about how much time it actually takes. Thank you. So, yeah, very quickly, to wrap up, lots of words. Bring in your sound people early. Don't leave it to post-production. Getting me in before you pick up a camera can save you, me, and everyone involved a huge amount of time, money, expense, and stress and swearing. We want to make the film as good as we can. Getting me in earlier is going to help that. We want to then sit and look at the script and story and work out exactly what sound's doing for it or can do for it, where the problems might be, where we can improve the workflow, where we can improve what we're recording, how we can shave time and effort off post-production. We want to think about what the emotional intent, the content style is going to be. We want to think about what do we need? What do we want to end up with? What kind of story are we telling? How do we want it to come across to the audience? Plan your workflow. Start at the end. Work out what you're going to need to hand over to somebody and work backwards from there. That's going to make your life easier. Consider your sound during location recce. If you're going to come into a space and think, yeah, this looks great. Also do this. Have a listen. What do you hear? Are you there at the same time of year, same time of day? Is there something, are you next door to a football match, or is there a fish gutting plant just off the end of the end of the shot that's going to make a lot of noise? Think about how much time this will actually take. How many pictures do you normally have going at one time on an edit? One, yeah? So you have to decide when it starts and when it ends. Sound, usually maybe 2 or 3 atmospheric tracks, maybe a few spot effects, maybe some music, maybe some ambiances. There might be 10, 15, 20, 30 sounds going at any one time, each of which you need to decide when it starts. Does it go with the picture edit? Does it go against it, before or after? How long or slow the fades are, what EQ, what compression, what level, what effects you might want to use on it. There are lots and lots of decisions that are made. You've got to have time for it. Have plan B. When you're recording sound, think, okay, this bit looks great, but the sound is terrible. Maybe we go and maybe we take a couple of beauty shots in slow motion and we interview them afterwards somewhere nice and quiet. Plan B, just in case. Last bit. Plan more, fix less. I'm on your side. I want your film to be much, much easier if you get rid of those problems before they happen. I will hand you over.
Can I just have Ali's photo behind me? Just so, unfortunately, I was in Sheffield the past couple of days, so I haven't had time to prepare any slides. But thank you, Ali. I thought that was really great, and I agree with everything that you said. Because also, I think, when you think about picture and sound, our eyes can adjust so much to picture. We can have an overexposed shot. We can have an underexposed shot. We just can adjust. But if it's a horrendous sound, you want to leave. You want to turn it off. If there's a mic hissing, you can't fix it. You want to just chuck it, and it can really ruin your film or project. Don't just fix it in post. Yeah, I think the thing about editing is, and what I love about especially the offline process, is it's really the hub of all of post. We're in touch with sound, we're in touch with color, visual effects, sound effects, I mean, production, everything, comes through us, and then it goes out, and then it comes back and forth. And so it's sort of, there's a lot of control and knowledge that goes there. I was trained in a lot of different ways, the old school ways where there was a lot of money in commercials and in film and in TV, and they could afford to do things right with assistant editors and post producers. And that's a luxury that doesn't exist for a lot of projects now. I mean, a lot of times we're just doing it on our own and trying to make it work. And so as a producer and an editor, not usually on the same project, but on different jobs, I can feel the pain on both. As a producer, we just delivered a TV show for BBC Scotland, which is on next Tuesday. And the budget tariffs are so low, and you want to put everything into production, and you want to put everything on screen, and you do have to carve out enough for post, because you put all that effort in, and you can't finish it properly. You can't do the sound properly or the color properly, and even me budgeting for a post, I didn't budget enough for sound or for color because we just ran out, and it is then asking amazing favors, and or we're not getting the best that it could be. I mean, you put in all this effort, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we don't have enough time to really do a second or third pass on color, or we've got a day and a half to mix it, and it just doesn't do it justice for a film that you've spent now 6 months, a year, 2 years on. So if you can try to carve time and money into your post budget, it's so important. Editing. The world has changed a lot with files and Premiere and Avid. None of that really matters. But it is important to get the workflow established correctly from the beginning. And if you can, bringing on a color online and colorist ahead of time to get your workflow established would be great. Because I know with Premiere, these days with Premiere, you can just really mess things up. You can lose your metadata, do this, do that, and keeping it organized so that you can transition into the online and not waste all your budget trying to reorganize it. So you're doing it properly from the start. I guess one question I have is, does anybody have any specific questions? Can I ask, just because they're editing, budgeting for editing, on preparing for post, is there anything that somebody is really interested in knowing, because it's such a big field? If not, I'll just keep talking. Yeah. Oh.
About assembly editing when you're still filming.
Yeah.
And, how useful is it to start assembly editing already?
I think it's, if you can, it's great, especially for, less so for documentary, but for theatrical, for fiction, for narrative film, it can save the film. On a technical side, if something happens in the rushes that is digitally or just technically wrong, you catch it and you can say, hey, this was not exposed right, or there's some digital hits or something in the footage, or something, whatever went wrong. But then on the other side, just assembling the scenes while you're in that, before you break down that set, you could say, hey, we actually need a pickup of that. I need a close-up of this. It's not, I need that reaction shot. It's much harder afterwards to go and capture that, because you've got to redress the set. So there's been countless times when even if you're just throwing it together, it's great to have that opportunity to catch shots that are missing. And it happens a lot, because you think you've covered it. You think you want it wide. You think you don't really need the reaction of that person. And you're there and you're like, actually we do. We really do. Especially when you're, in the edit, you restructure on fiction, you can restructure the film completely. You change the words, you change the lines, you cut a scene, for tension. And if you're missing that one bit, you don't want to have to do pickup shots that you can't actually pick up later. So, just trying to think as well. was so inspired by what you said, Ali, about sound and keeping it and planning ahead for it. And I would say you can do a lot of the planning for offline ahead of time as well in keeping the paperwork. I think that's a lost art. And a lot of times, again, it's different for documentaries and for script or for fiction. But if you can keep notes, it's really great. For passing on to sound, for passing on just to the editor. There's a lot of different styles too, where an editor might receive a drive of footage and be like, cut that, or you're working in tandem with the director all the time. So it sort of depends if you've got your director right there, so you can bounce ideas. But if you're on your own, having good notes is great. Yeah.
Talking of notes, like what's like the best things that on notes script supervisor can provide you?
I mean, it's so great if you're in the mind of the director, because you're usually on fiction, you're assembling by yourself. So to get into the head, or you're talking to the director, after the day's shoot, but you're, to know that they like that take and why, and you start to get it again. While you're filming, you're saying, okay, they like that because of this, or there's and just information, like there's a wild line why, they picked up this. At the end of the day, we were going to watch everything and we're going to have our own take on it. But if again, it's just great to be able to say, okay, that was the favorite, just especially in the assembly time, if you're on such a short schedule, just to be able to bang out some stuff, because you'll assemble it without really absorbing all the rushes, and you'll do a second pass and go through the takes. But when you can just sort of say, okay, great, I like that one was good because of that, and you start again getting into the head of what was happening, what we're looking for the story. Yeah. And again, back to just budgeting and scheduling, I think really I think it's getting, because a lot of facilities and there's a lot of different channels that right now that are doing this sort of formulaic, like, okay, we'll put 2 days for sound and 2 days for color. And I think it's just, back in the day, you would spend 3 weeks on sound and have that time to carve out sound design and clean up. And again, on what Ali was saying, is taking the time for an editor or an assistant editor to come in to prep all these sessions and track lay, because it will save all that time and frustration for the artists that follow. Same thing with color. If there's things that we can clear up, saying, okay, this is what this camera's on this channel or this camera's on this track, so it might make life easier. But anyway, I'm probably going on too long, but.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can only echo the sentiments of these guys by saying that post-production guys and the roles that they have in terms of editing, sound design, color grading, are given so little thought in terms not only of the time allocated to them, but just of the whole process itself, especially color grading, I think, because, as I mentioned earlier, it's not taught, as far as I know, in any kind of dedicated course in this country. I mean, films have been graded digitally for the last 19 years. The year 2000 was the first digitally color graded film, and the University of Edinburgh only started teaching color grading 3 years ago. So it's kind of understandable why color grading just would be this afterthought for so many filmmakers, especially if they're inexperienced. They may just not think of it as being this important thing. But if they're shooting something on, say, S-Log, flat, raw, they've got this gray, washed-out image, and all of a sudden they get to the color grade, they realize this image is going to drastically change now. We really should have put thought in what this image should look like before the grade happens. But I color graded 3 short documentaries last month, and I didn't see the film until I was setting up the project to grade the film. I hadn't met the director. I hadn't had any conversation with them, references, pictures, anything about what they wanted the image to look like. And I can't really fault them too much, because they just, they were inexperienced filmmakers. One of them was a first-time filmmaker. So they just haven't been taught, they haven't had the experience of realizing that color grading is something that needs a lot of time to think about. This is a process that is going to change your image. It's going to change how the audience feels about your film. And it's just, the look of your film is something you should be thinking about, as with the sound, well before the shoot happens. Colorists should be talking to cinematographers about how best the cinematographer should be shooting certain scenes. For example, say there's some day for night shots that they want. The colorist can then be talking to the cinematographer about how best those scenes should be shot in order to avoid nightmares in the grade of, color correcting the sky because it's white instead of black, things like that. That's happened. I color graded a film that was meant to be day for night and told the cinematographer beforehand. I was lucky. I was invited to talk to them beforehand. And I said, don't shoot the sky. If you want a day for night, just don't shoot the sky. You'll be fine. Sky in every shot. And the cinematographer, who was very talented, they had shot an Oscar-nominated short, just said, well, we could just do sky replacement. You can do that in Resolve now. And I'm like, yeah, we can, but it takes like weeks and millions of dollars. So think about, the amount of money you have, the amount of time you have to spend on your grade. Even though you have these amazing digital tools now in which you can do all these amazing things, you may not have the money to spend to pay your colorist to do these amazing things. I've got a couple of clips with me just to kind of illustrate a good example of fixing something in post and a bad example, because I think there are times when fixing it in post, or not so much fixing it in post, but doing it in post, creating a look in post is fine. You don't need to do everything in camera. You don't need to spend ages setting up your lights, putting the exact gel in to get this exact color look you want. Certain things can be done very quickly in post that can be done, quicker there than they can be on set. Other times, things can be just achieved so much more simply on the set than they can in post. And I've got two examples with me. So let's look at the good example. So this is a good example of creating a look in post. This was for a feature that I graded 3 years ago. So in this feature, this character played by Nena Cherry goes through a process of grieving. The film starts just after she has accidentally killed somebody in a car accident. And she's living in Stockholm, and she's walking through Stockholm throughout the film, coming to terms with this grief. So the film starts off very desaturated, very dark, very grey. And the film ends with her kind of exploring the city, rediscovering herself, coming to terms with what she's done, and feeling happier about herself. So we end with very saturated, happier shots. Now, this film was shot completely out of sequence. The director didn't know exactly where certain shots might end up in the story. So rather than take the time to kind of shoot certain shots with certain filters to make them warm or cold on the day, everything was basically just shot flat. And then we decided in post which shots should go in the end, which shots should go in the beginning. And this is really just a simple case of bumping up the saturation to create this look at the end. It's not something that's going to take a long time. So there's no real reason to kind of do it on set, which would have taken a lot of time and thought, consideration. Here's a good example where we can just do it in post. So this is fine. This is a good example, I would say, of creating a look in post and not doing it on the set. Bad example. This is a short film that I graded called, what's the Spanish translation? Insomnia on a Summer Night. So this is two noisy neighbors keeping each other up at night. The male character is in blue. He's got a blue room. Female character's got this orange warm room. So on set, they've got this big orange light on set. The boy's got the blue light. So easy way to distinguish the characters. So for interior shots, everything's fine so far. They're keeping it all consistent on the set. Not much needed really to do in the grade. But when it comes to a shot that's coming up here, outside, they forgot to put the orange light in that room for the exterior shot. So here, we've got a moving shot on the outside of this building, and we've got a window that needs to be orange. And nothing else should be orange except that window. So that I'm going to have to now draw around that window, frame by frame. with the shot moving, which is not easy, there are tools in DaVinci Resolve, which is the color grading software I use, that can track certain objects. But when you've got crazy things like this with this bucket flailing about the window, it's not going to be very easy, except to just basically draw shapes frame by frame. Now, this was a short film, so it wasn't a total disaster. But imagine if this was a feature, and this was like, Rear Window, where you come back to that same shot over and over and over again throughout the whole film. All they needed to do was just put a red light in that room, and that would have just saved, a total headache from happening. So that's a bad example of fixing it in post. And I'm sure somebody would have realized at the time, those shots don't match. But I'm sure they would have just said, we'll fix it in post. But yeah, as far as like color grading goes, I just have to echo sentiments of bring people on early. Bring your post people on board early. Don't just show them your project as you're needing them to start doing this job. Don't give Ali the sound files and give him the film to watch at the same time. Bring him on board. Let him know what kind of mood you're going for. What's the vibe of this film? Same with your editor. Let them read a script beforehand before they get the rushes. Tell the colorist, what's the mood of this film? What's it about? Let them talk to the cinematographer so they can work things out beforehand as well. Just because things happen after the shoot doesn't mean that they should be an afterthought. Post is just as important as pre-production.
So I have questions for all of you. First, you mentioned we should be contacting you right at the beginning, but what's the general workflow of where do you come in usually, and who do you talk to, and is it through the editors, or just can give us kind of an overview on what the general workflow of your specialist fields are generally?
Well, just also to say, as an editor, it was the one thing I've forgotten to say, which is, if we can read the script ahead of time, we can also be really helpful, because there's, repeated moments, there's missing moments, there's pacing issues that we can, we sense as an editor, because we've done this now a few times, to say, wow, it'd be great if we had this, or have you thought about that? How are you going to shoot it? Because we know what we're going to be looking for, what kind of shots we're going to be looking for. And so if we can read the script and be part of that dialogue early, it'd be great. Also, to understand the mood of a scene. I think before coming into the edit for directors, to be involved and say, this scene is about this, and to really know at the heart of it what the scene is about is great. So on that note, it depends on the project, and that's for documentaries too, because we can give feedback saying, you're going to go shoot in this exotic location. Get me this. I need wild sounds of this for tone. I need cutaways for this. Just make, if this is the mood, why are we going to that place? Get me these shots, so that way we can build that in the visual storytelling. So oftentimes, an editor is brought on prior to the film, but sometimes it's usually right at production, because they're, if on indies, things are moving so fast, but you don't get the budget approved, or you don't get the financing in until the last minute. You can't always plan ahead, so a lot of times it is right at, hey, we're shooting in 2 weeks. Can you come on board? But it's still important to read the script, or read the treatment, get involved. That was your main, yeah.
Great.
It varies so wildly. The ones that I enjoy most and the ones that go smoothest are generally the ones where people get in touch with me right at the start. Before the shoot, they ask me to recommend sound recordists. I recommend sound recordists. They pick one of them. We sit, me, director, sound recordist, around the script or around the story, and we look at what we're going to need. We look at things that are going to be difficult. We look at potential problems, and we look at plan Bs or plan As as well as ways to get around these things. And it generally means that on the shoot, they know what they're trying to achieve. They're not having to wing it as much, and it means that in post, things go much, much smoother. I did 2 shoots, or two short films, pretty much kind of side by side, where one of them took one of the sound recorders I recommended. We sat around the script. They went away. They got all the sounds. They got around all the problems. They came back. Bang, bang, bang. Film went together, went out, won awards. Everyone was happy. Yay. The other one, 8 months of ADR hell from talent who were mostly in London. And it was a nightmare. It still ended up being nice and it won things and stuff. But, you know, it didn't have to take that long. It didn't have to be that stressful. And frankly, ADR never sounds as good as location sound anyway, if you get it right, if you're getting good location sound. So, yeah. Lots of people think post-production happens in post. Ideally, we get it done in pre enough that post becomes really, really smooth and easy.
I think one of the reasons also that stuff does always just get shifted to post-production in terms of planning is because a lot of directors think that the post-production process entirely, editing, sound, grading, is so technical, and they feel a little bit intimidated that they don't have this technical knowledge, that they can't talk to these people beforehand about planning stuff because they think they need to talk to them in a techie way. You know, oh, we need to do this kind of technical thing with the edit. And really, you don't need to do that as a director, I think, with your editor or your colorist or your sound designer. You just need to talk to them conceptually. You can just talk to them about emotions. How is this film meant to make us feel? You don't need to say, we need to make sure that you use that color wheel in this way for this color effect. You can just leave all of that techie stuff to the people who are doing the job. You can just talk to people about emotions that you want the colors to kind of bring across, sounds that give a certain kind of atmosphere. You can just talk to your post people conceptually. Don't feel intimidated about the techie side of things. Let us guys worry about all that. Let us worry about the tools that we're going to use. You can just, as a director, talk to us as an artist. You know, talk to us about how you want us to make your film feel. You know, talk to us in that way, and that will feel much less kind of intimidating from a technical side, I would say.
And it's also easier, I think, for us as artists to work with what your emotion is versus if you're telling us, okay, can you do this technically? But why? You know, so I think that dialogue is really helpful.
That's a really, really good point. I want to be telling stories. I don't want to be someone who, I'm not, I mean, you know, I have a certain technical set of skills that need to do certain things, not like Liam Neeson. I thought that was funnier. You know, there are technical skills that are certainly part of that job, but what I'm trying to do is tell a story. And if you can let me know what kind of story that is, that's much more valuable than you trying to pick up a technical language that you don't have and don't need to have.
Questions? Anyone?
I've got a question. So, I really like working with people, and I'd love to have like a dream team with you guys on board. But at the moment, I'm quite new to this, and so my projects are largely self-financed, and probably will be until quite late on. So I feel kind of trapped because I'd love to get your expertise and have you on board at the beginning, but I don't have any money to pay you, and I think that's probably the case for a lot of people. That you're saying money is a real kind of stumbling block unless we have it up front. We can't bring them on board up front, and then we have to kind of get bits and bobs of money together and then pay you right at the end, and that's really frustrating.
No, that's a really good point. I mean, it's something that in this country there's not the industry that there might be, and there are lots of people who are flying under the radar doing things very low budget, and that's presumably one of the reasons why, people are shy to come forward a little bit earlier. The thing is, I'm not going to charge anyone extra for being on earlier because they're making my job easier. They will mean that I'm probably going to have to spend fewer hours on it, and we're probably all going to be happier with what we end up with. So, money is, pays my rent, pays my bills, buys me shiny microphones. But at the same time, what I'm interested in is telling stories, and money isn't everything. It's useful. I like it, but it's not everything.
I would agree to a certain extent. I think it's about a relationship, and if you know you're going to want to work with, a certain team and you want to bring them on early, it's, I think as an editor, we want to be involved early because it's part of the storytelling process, and it's about what is this film really about, and building that relationship with the director is will only make the edit smoother and better and more enjoyable, and get the film closer to what it wants to be. Instead of trying to get into your head right on day one of rushes where there's a lot of pressure and the clock starts ticking. I think one of the things that I love the most about working with directors is just having those conversations about what the film is and what the story is. And for me, getting involved early, reading a script or talking about reading a treatment or talking about character or what they're planning on shooting. Oh, this is an interesting storyline. I mean, I love that. I mean, I'm about to go into an edit mid-July, but I've been talking to the director since April about what he's thinking about shooting. And we're not spending 8 hours a day talking, but just saying, hey, I've got this idea. What do you think? And we just it also makes it far more collaborative and again, really fun.
Yeah, I would say don't worry. I think you're in the same position as every interesting filmmaker in this country right now. When I'm talking about, bring guys in early to talk about plans, I'm not talking about week-long, hour-long meetings where you're telling your post-production people every minutia of information that there is about the film. I'm saying, as a colorist, one email with one Vimeo link to your edit, one paragraph with how you want the colors to look, and 5 images as far as references go would be awesome. And and one phone call with the DOP. And I'm not going to charge, the time that it takes me to read that email and to watch that Vimeo link. And these are things that I don't get a lot of the times, nothing. So even that would be amazing. So don't think in terms of, oh man, if I bring people in before the shoot, it's going to add so much to my budget. It's like, no, just send us a couple of emails at least. That would be grand.
And then also they were talking in a very indie way, which is, I think, majority of how we work. But, as we, if you grow into or want to work in bigger films, theatrical releases or TV shows, this is incorporated in that workflow. You do talk about, for me as a post-producer, we will have, a dailies workflow established, which happens way before the shoot, where we're talking about how are we recording sound, how are they being merged onto the rushes, how are they getting to the editor. So a lot of that is in play on bigger shows, bigger films, because it's essential. It's just, I think when we get into this indie world where we're all winging it and trying our best, the protocols get lost mostly because we just don't know what they are. And that's where talking to the heads of department comes in really handy, because it's one great way to learn, but that's just what you have to build towards. And when you start thinking that way, that is how, I'm not saying that we're not professionals, but that is how the big players do it. They have their workflows established early on. They have checklists. They have, it's formulaic, and it's all approved by every department. Color, online, sound, everybody's involved in those prep meetings on those bigger shoots. So it's just trying to maybe bring that in from as an indie, I think would raise the bar for everybody.
Anyone else? Yep.
So, a technical question for the colorist. What was your reasoning behind using DaVinci Resolve over, say, Premiere?
Really, it was just the software that I was trained on. Premiere, as far as I know, has color correction tools, but they're way less advanced than the tools that Resolve has. I started off using Avid's color correction tools before I learned Resolve, and then when I started on Resolve, realized how limited Avid's tools were. So really, it's the program that I was trained on. the tools were way more advanced, and I think they give a much better quality of image than editing programs do. I mean, Resolve is designed for color grading. It's kind of now being marketed as this kind of all singing, all dancing piece of software. It's got a new editing tool. It's got a new sound design tab. It's now got a compositing tab in the most recent version. But it's designed to grade images and maintain maximum quality. Avid, Premiere, they're not designed to do that. They're kind of designed to do offline edits. That's their primary function. Not saying you couldn't do it that way. I mean, I know some people who want to make something quick and just grade in Premiere. That's totally fine if that's what you're up for. It's just wasn't trained in it that way myself. That's the only reason.
I was just going to say, I mean, and it might be, hey, buddy. Might be, hopefully I'll get this right, but I believe Screen Skills, I think it's on Creative Scotland, they are trying to offer more bursaries to train in certain specific fields. And I think color grading is one of them. I mean, it would be great to have more color grading options in Scotland because a lot of people, feel like they have to go to London for it. So, yeah, just wanted to throw that one out there.
Following up on that question about software, does DaVinci Resolve for coloring? For you, what works best? What do you generally work with? And what, as an indie filmmaker who might be offlining it themselves, what advice would you have for people?
Don't worry so much about the software. Don't worry about the tools. They're just tools with different coloured handles. The audience will not know what you have used. Won't care. It's just a tool.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if it's Avid or Premiere or Final Cut, I don't use Final Cut X or 10 or whatever.
Never use Final Cut X.
Yeah. Okay, so don't use Final Cut X. But I just talked to an editor who cuts a bunch of stuff for like Werner Herzog, and she uses Final Cut X. That's what she does, which shocked the shit out of me. But I was like, okay, fine. I think with Avid or Premiere, there's always the question. They served her, I think, one, it's whatever you're most comfortable with. Also, what is your workflow at the end of the day? Because it might save you more time doing one or the other. But it is what you're comfortable with. Because at the end of the day, it's not the software that tells the story. It's the storyteller.
Yeah, I mean, you really just need the tool that can do the job you want to do. Like, Avid has very basic color correction tools, but say, for instance, you really desperately need to mask something out in an image. Avid, as far as I know, doesn't really have anything very advanced that can do that, in which case you'll need to go into something a bit more advanced like Resolve. But when I was taught color grading, I was taught if it looks good, it's right. You've done the job right. So regardless of what tool you've used. But if Resolve can do something that something else can't, great, go for Resolve. But yeah, if the image looks good, or if it's there already, regardless of what tool you've used, then you've done it right. That's what I was taught.
If that nail is in the bit of wood, you don't know if I used a hammer or the heel of somebody's shoe. Doesn't matter.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Thanks everyone for a very enticing talk, and it's great to see that you all have so much passion. I just want to say a message where I think we're going to take away is talk beforehand. But I'm an editor myself, and I feel like, in particular in the UK, there's a lack of conversation afterwards. And from what you've been talking about, post-production, whether it's editing, mixing, grading, can turn into an emergency room when the money's run out, when lots of things happened, and it's we fix things and we correct, and we can tell what happened, and hey, everyone's happy. But actually, I really believe that cross-disciplinary conversation of us making friends with the DOPs, with the it depends on what scale of production I was actually talking, and not picking up the phone to slag off and say, hey, how have you done? Yeah. But actually, those chats, sometimes people just didn't know, and they won't learn that unless that conversation has happened afterwards.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So I don't know who is in the room and what departments you're in and where you're going to head, but I generally just want to say, actually, people really love hearing feedback, and we've spoken about this for a while, of just talking afterwards as well, of not just the worst bits, but the kind of fun tricks and things you've learned. something will change culturally, I think, in the industry.
It's yeah. I mean, that's the thing. We're largely here, kind of talking about the nightmares, because hopefully by addressing that we can get better. But yeah, they're equally well. There are loads of things that have gone really well and that we've enjoyed and we've learned and we've gained things from. And otherwise, we probably wouldn't still be doing it. I think that's a very good point. We sometimes maybe forget to pat each other on the back when we think people have done a good job.
Yeah. I mean, on my last project, I was really happy because I was producing it and I come from an editing background. So I was really, it was great that before we really kicked off into post, I had a drinks night where we had sound, post, color, and production come together so that they could all meet each other and be part of a conversation, because I did want to bring on that collaborative team, and I didn't want it to be that isolated feeling. Likewise, when we were in the finishing, it was always including the editor on the links, sound as well, and if people, there's always that, you don't have to watch, you don't have to give feedback, but it's there because if, you have put in your time and your energy, if you care about, if you want to be involved, if you want to have a say, here's your time to say it. Because once I say, hey, here's the last bit of, it's going on broadcast, here's the link, well, it's too late. So, a lot of times due to scheduling, there's not much time for feedback, but it's there. But I agree. I think it's important to keep that collaboration because we all work so hard and we all put our all into it. And if we can talk about the film collectively, then it does create that conversation and make it better.
Yeah, I think things are slowly changing for the better. I think as more awareness comes that post-production skills are every bit as artistic and creative and collaborative as, cinematography and, script writing and all that goes. When the time comes for the premiere, once people are aware that, color grading's a thing, editing's a thing, these are really important things, and they see the results on screen, and they meet the person responsible afterwards, and they go, oh, you did the colors, or you did the editing, it was really good, I noticed these things, and those things really stood out. Those are the things that kind of make life worthwhile. And when, you get that feedback afterwards, and I'm hearing it more as time goes on, as people become more aware of these skills in post-production. So I think we're getting there. We're going in the right direction.
And I was also just thinking, again, the last shoot we did, you can close your ears for this one because you might get scared. We shot with 3 different cameras. None of them had, and we had a ton of shots in a 30-minute piece. And, and we had a day to color. And it's just, that's not enough time at all. I mean, you can barely get through just balancing things out, let alone tapping into the artistry that is color grading and storytelling. But I think that talking to, I think as a producer and editor, bringing, talking to all the departments early, saying, hey, this is where it's at. This is my budget. This is what can we do, and what can I do ahead of time that would help you get this ambitious project done? Because we are all working on either self-finance projects or low budgets, because nobody's ever saying, hey, I've got so much money on this job. Oh my God, I don't know what to do. So we're always, faced with these challenges. And I think, again, I think if people want to be involved in a creative process, getting in, I've comp days or whatever you want to call it, because I love the project. I want to do a good job. I want to see it through. And if it's like, it just needs another few days or another bit of this, no, I don't work for free. But again, it's that balance of, I love this film. I get it. If it goes, crazy, then let's talk and maybe we can get some, compensate. I don't believe in anyone working for free, but I do think that it's finding that balance as well. And
Have any of you worked on 360 or VR? How was it?
No.
No, I've done a little bit of game audio. I'm actually about to start some research on sound for VR for a project. Are you looking to do something?
I'm interested in doing 360. Possibly, yeah. I don't know, it doesn't seem to be huge in Scotland.
We'll chat. Somebody has been talking to me about a job that would involve VR sound, and although most of what I'm doing is 5.1, I'm now looking at this is something I'd quite like to have a look at, and I'll be doing some research over the summer.
Just sort of tangentially, I've worked on some projects in New York. It's a pain in the ass now, but it can be. It's like, I mean, I think not sure what the specific question is, but it's exciting, and it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of painting out things and frames, because the way you're for visually at least, the way you shoot and how the things move. I mean, I don't know 360 as much as VR, because I just happened to be on a project that was for a teaser for J.J. Abrams' sci-fi thing on about JFK, and it was like, and it was a trip, because it's like you're wearing this VR mask, but you're like, oh yeah, there's the stitch, and you're like, oh yeah, there's the stitch. So it's a lot of post work for sure. But I didn't know a little bit less about how one shoots it, but I can tell you about whatever I know.
All right. On that note, I should say that we can continue the conversation over drinks and stuff. And please let us know if there's certain topics that you want us to talk about or bring in more people, because we hope to do these probably like 2 or 3 times a year, and then continue with our regular monthly networking nights. But until now, enjoy, and hopefully everyone will stick around and meet and network. And thanks so much. Thank you so much for everything.
And yeah, the Cinetopia events are super fun.
Thank you.